The silence of deep space was broken by the faint, rhythmic beeping of an emergency beacon. Its signal traveled across the vast emptiness, skipping between relay stations until it reached a modest research station hovering at the edge of the galaxy. Inside the primary communications hub, Captain Aiden Cross stared at the flickering holographic display showing the source coordinates. His weathered face, illuminated by the blue light, remained stoic despite the alarming nature of the message. "This can't be right," said Dr. May Harlow, her slender fingers dancing across the console as she verified the signal for the third time. Her youthful features contrasted with the gravity in her dark eyes. "These are from Helios 4. According to our records, there should be a thriving Centaurian colony there with over 2 million inhabitants." Aiden nodded grimly. "And yet the emergency beacon is broadcasting the planetary destruction code. No regular communication, no follow-up messages. Just the code." The research station, officially designated as Outpost Epsilon 9, served as humanity's farthest observation point in the galaxy. Its primary mission was to monitor cosmic phenomena and maintain a peaceful presence at the border of human space. But in recent months, Captain Cross had been noticing disturbing patterns in ship movements across this sector, patterns that reminded him of military formations. "Cross," Dr. Harlow's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "I think you need to see this." She had pulled up additional data, overlaying the star maps with recent activity reports. 3 other colonies near the border regions went silent in the past month, all within Lorvian spheres of influence. Aiden felt his blood run cold. The Lorvian Empire, the dominant force in the galaxy for centuries, ruling over 200 planets with an iron grip. Humans had only joined the Galactic Concord, the loose coalition of species promoting peace and trade, a few decades ago. They were still considered newcomers, their technology unremarkable compared to the older species that had been traversing the stars for millennia. "We need to cross-reference this with all available data on Lorvian fleet movements," Aiden ordered, his military training taking over. Before joining the research division, he had served 15 years in Earth's defense forces. "And prepare a priority transmission to both the Concord Council and United Earth Headquarters." As May compiled the data, the station's sensors picked up something else, the distinctive energy signature of multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel nearby. Aiden's console lit up with proximity warnings. "Unidentified vessels approaching, Captain," announced Lieutenant Patel from the sensor station. "Configuration matches. Lorvian battlecruisers. 4 of them." Aiden's jaw tightened. "Battle stations. Initiate silent evacuation protocol for all non-essential personnel." The station's lights dimmed to emergency levels as crew members moved with practiced efficiency. Outpost Epsilon 9 was primarily a scientific installation, not a military one. Its defenses were minimal, designed to handle small pirate raids or meteoroid impacts, not a Lorvian battle fleet. "Captain, they're hailing us," Lieutenant Patel reported. With a deep breath, Aiden activated the communication screen. The stern face of a Lorvian commander filled the display, scaled blue skin, pronounced cranial ridges, and eyes that seemed to hold ancient contempt. "Human outpost." The commander's voice was unnaturally deep, the translator struggling to convey the proper inflections. "This is Commander Vorex of the Lorvian Imperial Fleet. You will lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." Aiden maintained a diplomatic facade. "Commander, this is a scientific outpost operating under Galactic Concord protection. We have no quarrel with the Lorvian Empire. May I ask the purpose of your visit?" The Lorvian's expression didn't change. "You have intercepted communications not intended for your species. We have detected your scanning activities in restricted sectors. You will surrender all data and submit to inspection." Behind Aiden, Dr. Harlow was frantically encrypting and transmitting their findings to Earth. She nodded slightly to him. The emergency data packet was away. "We are prepared to cooperate with reasonable requests," Aiden replied carefully. "But I must insist on proper diplomatic channels. Perhaps if you could contact the Concord Council." "You will comply immediately," Vorex interrupted, his voice hardening. Lower your shields within 60 seconds, or we will consider it an act of aggression. As Aiden weighed his options, the station's internal communication system suddenly activated. The voice of Ensign Tanner, a young security officer, echoed through the command center, and unknowingly through the open channel to the Lorvian. Ships. Captain, emergency protocols are ready. Security teams standing by. Remember the UEC directive. Humans don't negotiate with murderers. The words hung in the air for a moment before Aiden realized the channel was still open. The Lorvian commander's face darkened with rage, his scaled skin flushing a deeper blue. So this is the human position, Vorex snarled. Your insolence will be your undoing. Prepare to be boarded by force. Anyone who resists will be executed. The transmission cut off abruptly. Aiden turned to his crew, knowing they had minutes at most. Everyone, listen carefully. We have limited time. Dr. Harlow, is the data transmission complete? Yes, Captain. Earth has acknowledged receipt. Good. Lieutenant Patel, initiate security lockdown protocols. Seal all sensitive areas and prepare for hostile boarding. All personnel, this is not a drill. Activate emergency beacon and prepare escape pods. As the crew scrambled to their tasks, Aiden pulled Dr. Harlow aside. Those weren't just any distress signals you intercepted, were they? Her eyes met his, filled with grim certainty. No, based on the fragmented data I've analyzed, the Lorvians aren't just conquering these worlds, they're systematically destroying them. Helios 4 isn't just occupied, it's gone. And from what I can tell, Earth is next on their list. Aiden felt the weight of this revelation settle on his shoulders. Then we need to make sure this information reaches Earth, whatever the cost. Outside the station, the Lorvian ships moved into attack formation, their weapons systems powering up as they prepared to board the human outpost. Admiral Janet Kessler stood before the assembled Emergency Council in the United Earth headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her uniform was impeccable, but the circles under her eyes betrayed the sleepless nights since receiving the data packet from Outpost Epsilon 9. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation is grave, she began, her voice steady despite the news she was about to deliver. 3 days ago, our research station at the galaxy's edge intercepted distress signals from multiple colonies. Our analysis confirms the worst. The Lorvian Empire has destroyed at least 4 inhabited worlds along our border regions. The council chamber erupted in murmurs and exclamations. Composed of representatives from Earth's major regions and colonies, the United Earth Council, UEC, was humanity's highest governing body. Furthermore, Admiral Kessler continued once the noise subsided. The Lorvian Empire has seized our research outpost. The last transmission we received indicated that Captain Cross and his crew were about to be forcibly boarded after refusing to surrender their data. Counselor Tabo Nkosi from the African Union leaned forward. What was the exact nature of this refusal? Did Captain Cross provoke them? Admiral Kessler's expression remained neutral. According to the transmission log, a junior officer was overheard stating UEC Directive 117, which reads, "Humans don't negotiate with murderers." The Lorvians considered this an insult and immediately moved to hostile action. A diplomatic disaster, muttered Counselor Hideko Tanaka from the East Asian Coalition. We should immediately disavow this statement and open channels with the Lorvian Empire to explain this was not official policy. With all due respect, Counselor, interjected Admiral Kessler, the directive exists for a reason. And based on the evidence we've received, the Lorvians have indeed murdered, not just conquered, entire populations. The scans from Helios 4 show planetary devastation consistent with their stellar cleaver superweapon. At the head of the table, Council President Omar Diaz raised his hand for silence. What's the status of Captain Cross and the station personnel? Unknown, sir. We've lost contact. Presumed captured or killed. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had maintained a careful, sometimes subservient position in galactic politics since joining the Concord. They were newcomers on the cosmic stage, their technology considered primitive by the standards of species like the Lorvians who had mastered star travel millennia ago. "What about the Galactic Concord?" asked Counselor Tanaka. "Surely they must intervene. We are members with equal protection rights." A new voice answered from the doorway. "The Concord has recommended we negotiate." Ambassador Rhea Morgan strode into the chamber, her diplomatic uniform bearing the insignia of both Earth and the Galactic Concord. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her posture rigid with tension. "I've just returned from an emergency session. Several member species are suggesting we publicly apologize for the perceived insult and submit to Lorvian demands." "What demands?" President Diaz asked. Ambassador Morgan's expression hardened. "The surrender of all personnel involved in the insult, including the identification of whoever created Directive 117. Additionally, they want Earth to accept Lorvian protection, which, as we all know, is thinly veiled subjugation." Admiral Kessler stepped forward again. "Mr. President, Council members, there's something else you need to know. The data from Outpost Epsilon 9 contain more than just evidence of Lorvian atrocities. Dr. Harlow's analysis indicates Earth is potentially next on their list for cleansing. They've been systematically eliminating worlds that could potentially challenge their dominance within the next century. Their intelligence must have identified something in our development trajectory that they consider threatening." The chamber fell silent once more, this time with the weight of existential dread. "Options," President Diaz finally said. "I need options." Admiral Kessler nodded to her aide, who distributed secure tablets to each council member. "Operation Terminus. It's a defensive strategy we've been developing for the past 5 years, ever since we first detected unusual Lorvian activity near our borders." As the council members scrolled through the classified plans, Ambassador Morgan's eyes widened. This would be seen as an act of war by the Lorvians. It could also alienate us from the Concord. "With respect, Ambassador," Admiral Kessler replied, "we're already at war. The Lorvians just haven't announced it formally yet." Before the discussion could continue, an aide rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently to President Diaz. His face paled as he rose to his feet. "The Lorvian ambassador to the Concord has just issued an ultimatum," he announced. "Either we hand over those responsible for the insult and accept Lorvian oversight of our military installations, or they will consider it an act of hostility requiring their intervention." The council erupted again, voices splitting between those advocating immediate compliance to save Earth from destruction and those arguing for resistance against what amounted to surrender of sovereignty. "Silence." President Diaz's voice cut through the chaos. "This is exactly what they want, division and panic." "Ambassador Morgan, what's your assessment? You've dealt with the Lorvians more than anyone here." Rhea Morgan stood straight, her eyes moving across each face in the room. "The Lorvians respect only strength. If we submit now, we'll be subjugated forever. If what Dr. Harlow discovered is true, they already plan to eliminate us eventually. Submission will only delay the inevitable while stripping us of our ability to defend ourselves. So we fight a war we cannot win?" Counselor Tanaka challenged. "Perhaps we cannot win conventionally," Admiral Kessler interjected. "But Operation Terminus isn't about winning through superior firepower. It's about making any attack so costly that they choose not to pursue it." President Diaz studied the plans again. "This operation, it's unlike anything we've deployed before. Because we've never faced extinction before," Admiral Kessler replied simply. After hours of heated debate, the council reached a decision. With a narrow majority, they voted to reject the Lorvian ultimatum and activate Operation Terminus. Earth would stand its ground. The response was drafted carefully, but its essence remained clear. The United Earth Council regrets to inform the Lorvian Empire that we cannot comply with demands that compromise our sovereignty. Furthermore, we cannot surrender individuals for expressing a principle we uphold. Humans don't negotiate with those who commit genocide. As the message was transmitted across the galaxy, Ambassador Morgan prepared to return to the Concord with Earth's official position. Before leaving, She met with Admiral Kessler in a secure room deep within the mountain complex. "You realize what this means," Morgan said quietly. "Half the Concord will abandon us out of fear. Some may even side with the Lorvians." Admiral Kessler nodded grimly. "And the other half have suffered under Lorvian expansion themselves. They may not fight alongside us openly, but they won't condemn us either." Ambassador Morgan hesitated. "There's something else. Dr. Ezekiel Bourne has requested to speak with you about a component of Operation Terminus." Kessler raised an eyebrow. "Bourne? The AI specialist?" "The very same. He says he has a modification that could dramatically improve our chances." As Ambassador Morgan departed for the Concord, Admiral Kessler made her way to the lowest level of the complex where the most classified research took place. There, among a maze of servers and holographic interfaces, she found Dr. Ezekiel Bourne. The scientist was tall and gaunt, with perpetually musk-gray hair and intense blue eyes that seemed to burn with internal fire. "Admiral," he greeted her without preamble. "They've approved Terminus then?" "They have. What's this modification you're proposing?" Dr. Bourne gestured to the complex systems around them. "Collective AI was designed to coordinate our automated defense systems, but I've expanded its capabilities far beyond the original scope." He brought up a holographic display showing thousands of small crafts, each the size of a fighter jet. "These are dive pods, dimensional infiltration and velocity enhancement pods. Small, nearly undetectable, and capable of carrying either automated systems or human operators. I'm familiar with the technology, Doctor. What's new?" "The breakthrough is in how they operate together," he explained, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. "The collective can coordinate thousands of these simultaneously, allowing them to function as a single organism, adapting, evolving, and responding to threats in real time. And most importantly, they can perform synchronized micro-jumps." Admiral Kessler's eyes widened slightly. "Micro-jumps? Inside a battle zone?" "Precisely. Conventional military doctrine says it's impossible to calculate safe jumps in the chaos of battle. But the collective can. These pods can appear inside Lorvian ship formations, even within their shields." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "We can't match their firepower, Admiral, but we can be where they least expect us, when they least expect it." Kessler studied the simulations playing across the displays. "And you're certain this will work?" "Nothing is certain in war, Admiral, but this gives us a fighting chance. The Lorvians rely on overwhelming force and fear. They've never faced an enemy that could strike at their heart without warning." As Admiral Kessler left Dr. Bourne's laboratory, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's survival now hinged on a desperate gambit. Still, for the first time since the crisis began, she felt something akin to hope. In the halls of the Galactic Concord, Ambassador Rhea Morgan faced the assembled representatives of over 50 spacefaring species. The Grand Chamber, with its soaring crystalline dome reflecting the light of the binary stars outside, normally inspired awe. Today it felt oppressive. At the central podium stood High Chancellor Zorix of the Tellurian Collective, the current head of the Concord Council. Behind him, the imposing figure of Lord Draven, the Lorvian ambassador, waited with barely concealed contempt. The Concord has called this emergency session to address the growing crisis between the Lorvian Empire and Earth, Chancellor Zorix announced, his translator converting his harmonic speech into standard Galactic. Ambassador Morgan will present Earth's position, followed by Lord Draven's response. As Morgan approached the podium, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Many species had suffered under Lorvian expansion over the centuries, but few had dared to defy them openly. "Esteemed members of the Concord," she began, her voice steady, "Earth comes before you today, facing an existential threat. We have discovered evidence that the Lorvian Empire has been systematically destroying entire worlds, not conquering, not subjugating, but eliminating entire civilizations." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Morgan continued, presenting the data recovered from Outpost Epsilon 9, including the devastation of Helios 4 and the other colonies. The Lorvian Empire now demands we surrender those who dare to speak against these atrocities and accept their protection, a euphemism for control we all recognize. Earth respectfully declines. We will not submit to those who commit genocide. Lord Draven stepped forward before she had finished, his massive frame dwarfing the human ambassador. His voice boomed through the chamber without need of amplification. These are lies and fabrications. The colonies in question were harboring terrorists and biological weapons. The Lorvian Empire acted to protect the galaxy from these threats. His yellow eyes narrowed as he faced the assembly. The humans are newcomers who do not understand galactic politics. Their arrogance exceeds their wisdom. They have insulted the honor of the Empire with their accusations and now seek to turn the Concord against us. Chancellor Zorix raised his appendages for order as voices rose throughout the chamber. "What are the Lorvian Empire's intentions toward Earth?" he asked directly. Lord Draven's lipless mouth curled into what might have been a smile. "We offer them protection and guidance, as we have offered many developing species. Their technology advances too quickly without proper moral development. They must be supervised." Ambassador Morgan stepped forward again. "Let's speak plainly. The Lorvian Empire intends to subjugate Earth or destroy it if we resist. They have already captured or killed the crew of our research outpost for the crime of discovering their genocidal actions." "Preposterous," Lord Draven thundered. "The outpost was engaged in espionage against the Empire. It was a research station monitoring cosmic phenomena," Morgan countered, "until it received distress calls from dying worlds." The debate continued for hours, with various member species weighing in. The chamber gradually divided, with older, more established powers counseling Earth to accept Lorvian terms, while younger civilizations expressed sympathy for humanity's position. Finally, Chancellor Zorix called for order. "The Concord cannot reach consensus on this matter. As per our charter, we cannot intervene directly in what appears to be a bilateral dispute. We strongly encourage both parties to seek diplomatic resolution, but the Concord will maintain neutrality unless the conflict threatens wider galactic stability." Ambassador Morgan's heart sank. It was the outcome she had expected, but still a bitter disappointment. As the session concluded, various ambassadors approached her privately, some offering condolences, others practical assistance in the form of intelligence or supplies, all careful to avoid being overheard by Lorvian supporters. Before she could leave the chamber, Lord Draven intercepted her path, towering over her diminutive human frame. "Your species has made a grave error, Ambassador," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "The Empire has permitted your existence thus far because you were deemed insignificant. That assessment is being reconsidered." Morgan looked up at him, refusing to be intimidated by his physical presence. "Lord Draven, I will convey your threat to my government, but you should convey something to yours as well." She paused, ensuring her next words would resonate. "Humans don't negotiate with murderers. You may have technological superiority, but underestimating humanity's resolve would be your most significant miscalculation yet." The Lorvian's eyes widened slightly at her audacity before narrowing with rage. Without another word, he turned and strode away, his ceremonial armor catching the light as he exited the chamber. As Ambassador Morgan prepared to return to Earth, she received an encrypted message from a Centaurian diplomat whose people had long suffered under Lorvian incursions. The Lorvian battle fleet has already departed their central worlds. Destination: Sol System. May your goddess of war smile upon you. As Earth prepared for the coming storm, Admiral Oliver Reyes stood in the command center of the orbital defense platform Artemis. Through the viewing ports, he could see the blue-green sphere of Earth below, seemingly peaceful and untouched by the galactic turmoil about to engulf it. "Status report," he ordered, his voice carrying across the bustling control room where officers monitored defense systems spanning from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. "All Mars and Luna defense batteries at full readiness," reported Commander Sarachun. "The civilian evacuation of outer colonies is 87% complete. The collective AI core is online and synchronized with all defense nodes." Admiral Reyes nodded, his weathered face betraying no emotion despite the gravity of the situation. At 62, he had spent most of his life in Earth's defense forces, rising through the ranks during a period of relative galactic peace. Now, he faced the unenviable task of defending humanity against an enemy with vastly superior technology and numbers. "And the dive pods?" he asked. "Deployment complete, Admiral. 5,000 primary units in strategic positions throughout the system, with 10,000 reserve units on standby. Dr. Bourne reports that the collective is maintaining optimal coordination parameters." Reyes turned as the command center doors slid open, admitting Ambassador Morgan, fresh from her return journey from the Concorde. Her expression told him everything he needed to know about the diplomatic front. "The Concorde has chosen official neutrality," she confirmed. "Unofficially, we have some support, but no one willing to stand openly against the Lorvians." "We expected as much," Reyes replied. "Any intelligence on their approach?" "They've dispatched a battle fleet from their core worlds. Conservative estimates put their strength at over 2,000 warships, including at least one dreadnought carrying the stellar cleaver weapon." A hushed silence fell over the command center at the mention of the superweapon. Intelligence reports suggested it could trigger a controlled nova event, effectively sterilizing an entire star system. "How long do we have?" asked Reyes. 3 days at most. They'll be emerging from hyperspace at the system's edge within 72 hours. Reyes turned back to the tactical display, studying the defense plan they had formulated. Operation Terminus hinged on the principle that they couldn't match Lorvian firepower, but they could potentially surprise them with unconventional tactics. "Commander Chun, initiate final system-wide battle readiness protocols. I want all ships and stations on war footing within 12 hours. He turned to Morgan. "Ambassador, I know diplomacy has failed, but I'd like you to prepare a final message to be broadcast when they arrive. One last chance to avoid bloodshed, slim though it may be." Morgan nodded, though her expression suggested she had little hope for a peaceful resolution. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Kazuo from the sensor station. "We're detecting unusual activity in the Kuiper Belt region. Multiple small ships appearing on long-range sensors." Reyes and Morgan shared a concerned look. "Lorvian advanced scouts?" "No, sir. Configuration doesn't match any known Lorvian vessels. They're Centaurian, sir, and Rigelian. Several other species as well." One of the communications officers looked up from her console. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel. Audio only." "Put it through," Reyes ordered. A gravelly voice filled the command center. "This is Captain Krell of the Free Ship Defiance. We represent the coalition of free worlds, those who have suffered under Lorvian oppression. We bring 60 ships and crews experienced in fighting Lorvians. We offer our services to Earth in your hour of need." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the command center. Ambassador Morgan stepped forward. "This is Ambassador Rhea Morgan of Earth. Your offer is most unexpected, Captain Krell. May I ask why you would risk Lorvian retribution by aiding us?" "Because someone must finally stand against them," Ambassador Krell replied. "For too long, the Concorde has turned a blind eye to Lorvian atrocities, always counseling patience and diplomacy while more worlds fall. When we heard that humans had declared they would not negotiate with murderers, we realized you might be the catalyst the galaxy needs." Reyes and Morgan exchanged glances. 60 ships was a pittance against the Lorvian armada, but the expertise these veterans brought could be invaluable. "Captain Krell," Admiral Reyes spoke up, "your assistance is welcome. Please proceed to the coordinates we're transmitting for integration into our defense strategy." As the unexpected allies made their way into the inner system, Dr. Ezekiel Bourne worked tirelessly in the central AI chamber beneath the lunar surface. Surrounded by the humming processors of the collective, he fine-tuned the neural pathways that would coordinate humanity's defense. The collective wasn't merely a conventional artificial intelligence. It was a hybrid system that integrated the processing power of machines with the intuition and creativity of human operators. Through specialized neural interfaces hundreds of pilots could extend their consciousness into the system, guiding the dive pods while the AI handled the complex calculations needed for their synchronized micro-jumps. Dr. Bourne called one of his assistants. The latest simulation results are in. Bourne reviewed the data with a frown. The success rate is still too low. If the collective loses synchronization during a mass jump, we'll lose half our pods before they even engage. Perhaps if we reduce the total number in each wave, suggested the assistant. No, Bourne shook his head. The entire strategy relies on overwhelming their defenses through simultaneous attacks from multiple vectors. We need to strengthen the neural linkages between the pods. He turned to the main console. Collective, run diagnostic sequence epsilon and identify all nodes with synchronization efficiency below 99%. The AI's voice was smooth and gender neutral. Analyzing. 173 nodes identified with suboptimal synchronization. Begin adaptive reconfiguration on those nodes. Priority to those in central coordination clusters. As the AI worked, Bourne's secure communication device chimed. Admiral Reyes appeared on the small screen. Doctor, what's your status? The Lorvian fleet has been detected crossing the heliopause. We have less than 24 hours. We're making final adjustments, Admiral. The collective will be ready. Bourne hesitated. There is one concern, however. The neural load on the human operators will be substantial. We haven't had time for proper trials with this level of integration. Reyes's expression hardened. What are the risks? Mental fatigue, cognitive disconnect, possibly permanent neurological damage in extreme cases. The human brain wasn't designed to process battlefield information at this scale and speed. Have you informed the pilots? Yes. They've all volunteered to continue despite the risks. Reyes nodded solemnly. Keep me updated on any changes, Doctor. Earth survival may depend on your work. As the communication ended, Bourne turned back to his systems, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. The collective represented humanity's most advanced achievement in artificial intelligence and human-machine interface. Now, it would face its ultimate test. Throughout the solar system, humanity braced for war. Civilian shelters on Earth, Mars, and the Moon filled with families seeking protection. Military vessels moved into defensive formations. The small fleet of alien allies integrated into Earth's defense strategy, providing insights into Lorvian tactics and weaknesses. In the final hours before the Lorvian arrival, Admiral Reyes addressed all defense forces from the Artemis Command Center. Men and women of Earth's defense forces and our honored allies, the hour of our greatest test approaches. The Lorvian Empire comes not merely to conquer, but to subjugate or destroy. They believe their technological superiority and vast numbers ensure their victory. They expect us to surrender or be annihilated. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the command center and the countless personnel watching via transmission throughout the system. But they have miscalculated. They do not understand what it means to threaten our home, our families, our very existence. This will not be merely a battle for Earth. This is a battle for the right of all species to exist without bending knee to tyrants and murderers. Another pause, his voice growing more resolute. We may be outgunned. We may be outnumbered. But we will not be outfought. Every ship, every station, every weapon in this system has one purpose now. To make any victory so costly that the Lorvians will remember this day for 1,000 years. Stand firm. Fight smart. Protect each other. And remember, today we fight not just for our own survival, but for every world that has suffered under Lorvian oppression. Throughout the system, soldiers and civilians alike drew strength from his words. On the lunar base, dive pod pilots prepared to link with the collective. On defense platforms, gunners checked their weapons. In hidden positions throughout the system, ships powered up their systems, ready to spring the trap that humanity had laid. And then, as if in response to humanity's defiance, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the solar system. The Lorvian fleet had arrived. The Lorvian armada emerged from hyperspace like a storm front rolling across the sky, an endless procession of warships ranging from nimble frigates to massive dreadnoughts. At their center, dwarfing even the largest capital ships, was the Imperator's Blade, the flagship of the Lorvian fleet and home to the dreaded Stellar Cleaver. From the Artemis Command Center, Admiral Reyes watched the sensor displays with grim determination as the enemy ships spread into attack formation. Their numbers matched the intelligence estimates. Over 2,000 vessels arranged in the distinctive Lorvian spear point formation, designed to punch through defensive lines and then spread outward, engulfing defenders from all sides. "They're not wasting any time with demands or ultimatums," noted Ambassador Morgan, who had insisted on remaining at the command center rather than evacuating to Earth. "They made their demands clear," Reyes replied. "This is their answer to our refusal." He turned to his communications officer. "Broadcast Ambassador Morgan's final message on all frequencies." Morgan's pre-recorded message played across all channels. A last appeal for peace, a final warning that humanity would defend itself with all available means, and an offer for the Lorvians to withdraw and pursue diplomatic solutions. The only response was silence, followed by the sudden acceleration of a Lorvian vanguard toward the outer planets. "They're launching fighters," reported Commander Chun. "First wave heading toward our Neptune defense platforms." Reyes nodded. "Commence Operation Terminus." Phase 1. Throughout the solar system, Earth's defensive strategy unfolded. Rather than concentrating their forces, humanity had spread its assets widely, creating a defense in depth. The Lorvian advance encountered minimal resistance initially, which seemed to encourage them to accelerate their push toward the inner planets. Within hours, they had overwhelmed the token defenses at Neptune and Uranus, destroying orbital platforms and claiming the outer planets as staging areas. Their confidence growing, they pressed onward towards Saturn, where humanity had established more substantial defensive positions. "They're following the expected approach," noted Commander Chun, "securing their supply lines before committing to the inter-system assault." "Or so they think," Reyes replied. "Status of the dive pod network. All pods in position, Admiral. Collective synchronization at optimal levels. Dr. Bourne reports all systems go." Admiral Reyes took a deep breath. "Activate Phase 2. In that moment, thousands of previously dormant or hidden dive pods throughout the system simultaneously engaged their micro-jump drives. The battlefield transformed in an instant as swarms of the small, agile craft appeared within the Lorvian formations, inside their defensive screens between their carefully arranged battle lines, and in some cases, directly adjacent to their hull surfaces. The Lorvian fleet, accustomed to conventional warfare with clearly defined front lines, fell into momentary confusion. Each pod, guided by the merged consciousness of a human pilot and the collective AI, executed precisely calculated attack runs, targeting engines, weapon systems, and command nodes before jumping away milliseconds before Lorvian point defenses could lock on. "First wave reporting 70% success rate," announced Commander Chun, barely concealing her excitement. Multiple Lorvian vessels disabled or experiencing critical systems failure. Through the neural interface, Dr. Bourne monitored the collective's performance from his lunar facility. The human pilots, linked through advanced neural technology, directed the general tactics while the AI calculated the precise jump coordinates and attack vectors for each pod. Together, they operated as a single entity with thousands of components, a fighting style utterly alien to the regimented Lorvians. But the Lorvians were not without resources of their own. After the initial shock, their commanders adapted quickly, ordering ships to disperse and engage individual countermeasures. Point defense systems fired indiscriminately into the space around their vessels, creating lethal fields of energy that caught dozens of dive pods in their web. Second wave encountering increased resistance, Commander Chen reported. Lorvian capital ships are deploying some kind of quantum disruption field that's interfering with jump calculations. Reyes had anticipated this. Initiate adaptive jump patterns. Tell Dr. Bourne to shift to distributed coordination. On the lunar base, Dr. Bourne received the command and immediately implemented the contingency. Rather than coordinating all pods through the central collective, he divided them into autonomous swarms of 50, each with its own subnode of the collective. As one swarm encountered Lorvian countermeasures, the others learned and adapted without waiting for central direction. The battle for the outer planets raged for hours, with Earth forces inflicting disproportionate damage through their hit-and-run tactics. Yet despite their losses, the Lorvian fleet continued its inexorable advance toward the inner system. The numbers were simply too great to be stopped entirely. They're adjusting course, Commander Chun announced suddenly. The main fleet is bypassing Saturn's defenses, leaving only a containment force. They're accelerating toward Mars. Admiral Reyes studied the tactical display, noting the Lorvian flagship's position at the center of a heavily defended formation. They're going for a decapitation strike, attempting to reach Earth directly and deploy the stellar cleaver. He turned to his communications officer. Signal all inner system defenses. Prepare for Phase 3. As the Lorvian armada approached the asteroid belt, they encountered a new form of resistance. Hidden among the countless rocks and planetoids were automated mass drivers, electromagnetic cannons that hurled asteroid fragments at significant fractions of light speed toward the oncoming fleet. These simple kinetic weapons required no advanced technology, but the sheer mass and velocity of their projectiles made them devastating against even heavily shielded warships. The Lorvian advance slowed as they were forced to divert energy to forward shields and evasive maneuvers. Their tight formations broke apart to avoid the asteroid bombardment, creating gaps that Earth's defenders exploited with precision strikes from cloaked defense platforms. Yet still they came, their numbers overwhelming Earth's carefully planned defenses through sheer attrition. For every Lorvian ship destroyed or disabled, 3 more took its place. The inexorable mathematics of war began to tell against humanity's ingenuity. Mars orbital defenses under heavy attack, reported Commander Chun, her voice strained after hours of continuous battle. Phobos Station reports critical damage to outer rings. Deimos defense grid is offline. The Red Planet, humanity's first and most developed colony beyond Earth, now faced the full might of the Lorvian vanguard. Millions of colonists have been evacuated to underground shelters, but millions more remained in the sprawling cities of Olympus and Mariner Valley. Divert dive pod groups 3 through 7 to Mars defense, ordered Reyes. Prioritize protection of civilian centers. Before the order could be fully implemented, a blinding flash appeared on the tactical display as multiple Lorvian heavy cruisers fired their main weapons at Mars's largest city. The concentrated energy beams cut through the protective dome of Olympus, exposing the city to the thin Martian atmosphere. Emergency force fields activated, but not before thousands of civilians were lost to explosive decompression. Those bastards, someone muttered in the command center, breaking the professional decorum that had prevailed until now. Admiral Reyes remained outwardly calm, but his hands gripped the command console until his knuckles whitened. Status of Special Operations Team Alpha? In position, Admiral. Awaiting your command. Reyes took a deep breath. The next phase of Operation Terminus represented humanity's most daring gambit, and potentially their last. Give them a green light. Objective: Imperator's Blade. Target: the stellar cleaver. Across the battlefield, Earth forces executed a strategic withdrawal from Mars orbit, seeming to concede the planet to Lorvian control. The invaders, detecting this retreat, pressed their advantage, pushing rapidly toward Earth itself. Their sensors were focused on the larger human vessels and defense platforms, paying little attention to a small squadron of dive pods that separated from the main battle and executed a precisely calculated series of micro-jumps toward the heart of the Lorvian fleet. Inside one of these pods, Captain Aiden Cross checked his neural interface one final time. After escaping the Lorvian boarding of Outpost Epsilon 9, he had volunteered for what amounted to a suicide mission, infiltrating the Imperator's Blade and disabling the stellar cleaver before it could be deployed against Earth. Beside him, Dr. May Harlow monitored the specialized equipment they had brought for the mission. Though not a soldier, her knowledge of the stellar cleaver, gleaned from the data she had analyzed, made her presence essential. Approaching final jump coordinates, announced Lieutenant Rivera, the pod's pilot. Collective calculates a 62% chance of successful insertion. Those are better odds than I expected, Cross replied, securing his combat armor. Remember, once we're inside, we'll have limited communication with the collective. We'll be on our own until we reach the target. The squad of 12 Special Forces soldiers nodded grimly. Each was equipped with the most advanced combat systems Earth could provide, including adaptive camouflage and personal shield generators, technologies reverse-engineered from salvaged alien hardware. Executing final jump in 3, 2, 1. The dive pod vanished from normal space, its micro-jump drives calculating a path that would place it directly inside one of the Imperator's Blade's launch bays during a momentary fluctuation in its shields. The transition was jarring, as always. One moment they were in the void of space. The next, surrounded by the cavernous interior of a Lorvian hangar bay. Alarms immediately blared as automated systems detected the intrusion. "Move!" ordered Cross, as the pod's door slid open. The squad deployed with practiced efficiency, establishing a perimeter as Lorvian security forces responded to the breach. The interior of the Lorvian flagship was unlike any human vessel. Organic curves blended with crystalline structures, and the air carried a distinctive, metallic scent. The gravity was slightly higher than Earth standard, giving everything a heavier feel. This way, Dr. Harlow indicated, consulting a holographic map based on intelligence provided by their alien allies. The Stellar Cleaver's control nexus should be 3 levels up, in the central spine of the ship. The human squad moved quickly through the alien corridors, engaging Lorvian security teams in brief, violent skirmishes. Their adaptive camouflage provided momentary advantages, but the Lorvians quickly adjusted their sensors to track the intruders. "They're adapting faster than expected," muttered Cross after they were forced to detour around a heavily defended junction. "We need to pick up the pace." As they fought their way deeper into the massive vessel, the battle for the Sol system continued to rage outside. The Lorvian fleet had reached Earth orbit, engaging the planet's last line of defenses. Orbital platforms, defense satellites, and the remaining human fleet fought with desperate intensity, knowing there would be no further retreat. On the Artemis command platform, Admiral Reyes watched as humanity's defensive grid gradually collapsed under the relentless Lorvian assault. Dozens of enemy ships had been destroyed or disabled, but hundreds more pressed the attack. "Admiral," called Commander Chun, "we've lost contact with Luna Base. The Lorvians have landed ground forces at Tycho Crater. Earth's moon, humanity's oldest and most developed extraterrestrial settlement, was now under direct attack. With its extensive underground facilities, including Dr. Bourne's Collective AI Center, its loss would be devastating. Redirect orbital defense platforms 7 through 12 to provide covering fire for Luna," Reyes ordered. Status of Special Operations Team Alpha? Still showing active on internal trackers, but we've lost direct communication. They appear to be moving deeper into the Lorvian flagship. Reyes nodded grimly. Everything now hinged on Cross's team reaching their objective. If they failed, the Lorvians would likely deploy the Stellar Cleaver, and humanity's resistance would end in a blaze of stellar fire. Inside the Imperator's Blade, Cross's team had fought their way to the central core of the massive vessel. Casualties had been heavy. Only 7 of the original 12 remained combat effective. Dr. Harlow worked feverishly to bypass the security systems on a massive door blocking their path to the Cleaver's control center. "Almost there," she muttered, her fingers dancing across the alien interface she had modified with human tech. "Their encryption is complex, but I anticipated most of their protocols based on the data from Epsilon 9. Cross kept his weapon trained on the corridor behind them, where the sounds of approaching Lorvian reinforcements echoed. How much longer? Just a few more seconds. There! The massive door slid open, revealing a vast chamber dominated by a pulsating crystalline structure suspended in an energy field. Consoles ringed the chamber, staffed by Lorvians in ornate uniforms that marked them as technical specialists rather than warriors. They looked up in surprise as the human team burst into the room. The lead technician reached for an alarm control, but a precisely aimed shot from Cross's weapon stopped him before he could activate it. "Secure the room," Cross ordered. "Dr. Harlow, how long do you need?" 5 minutes to evaluate the system. Another 10 to reconfigure it safely, she replied, already moving toward the main control console. "If we just try to destroy it, the feedback could trigger a cascading reaction that would be just as deadly as a controlled deployment." Cross nodded, directing his remaining team members to defensive positions around the chamber's entrances. They would need to hold this position until Harlow completed her work. They didn't have to wait long before the Lorvian response came. Heavy weapons fire began to pound the sealed doors, and the ship's internal communication system activated. "Human intruders," a voice boomed in surprisingly good English. "This is High Admiral Veronas of the Lorvian Empire. You have committed an act of war by boarding the Imperator's blade. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated according to the laws of conflict." Cross exchanged glances with Dr. Harlow, who shook her head slightly. She needed more time. "High Admiral," Cross responded, activating his external communicator. "This is Captain Aiden Cross of United Earth Forces. Your empire committed the first act of war when you destroyed peaceful colonies and threatened Earth with annihilation. We're simply responding in kind." There was a pause before Veronas replied, his tone shifting to one of calculated reasonableness. "Captain Cross, perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. The Lorvian Empire seeks only to maintain galactic order. The colonies you mentioned were harboring dangerous technologies. As for Earth, we offer protection, not destruction. Is that what you call it?" Cross challenged. "Murdering millions to maintain order? Destroying entire worlds to protect the galaxy? We've seen the evidence, Admiral. We know what the Stellar Cleaver has done, and what you plan to do with it here." Another pause, longer this time. "You were aware, then, of the weapon's capabilities. Surely you must realize that your position is untenable. Even if you somehow disable this ship, our fleet will prevail. Earth will fall, but it need not be destroyed. Surrender now. Order your forces to lay down their arms, and your planet will be spared." Cross looked to Dr. Harlow, who held up 3 fingers. 3 more minutes needed." "You know our answer, Admiral," Cross replied, his voice hardening. "Humans don't negotiate with murderers." "So be it." Veronas's voice turned cold. "You have sealed your planet's fate." The assault on the chamber's doors intensified. Cutting beams began to slice through the reinforced metal, and the remaining human defenders prepared for their last stand. 60 seconds, Harlow called out, her fingers flying across the alien controls as she implemented her sabotage program. The first door gave way with a thunderous crash, and Lorvian elite guards poured through the opening. The human defenders unleashed a barrage of concentrated fire, their advanced weapons temporarily holding back the numerically superior force. 30 seconds, a second door breached. Lieutenant Rivera took a direct hit from a Lorvian energy weapon and collapsed. The defensive perimeter shrank as the remaining humans fell back to protect Dr. Harlow. 10 seconds. Crossed to position directly in front of Harlow, using his body as a shield as she completed the final sequence. Energy weapons fire sizzled past him, one bolt grazing his armor and searing the flesh beneath. "Done," Harlow exclaimed, initiating the program. The crystalline structure at the center of the chamber began to pulse erratically, its harmonious glow giving way to jarring flashes of discordant energy. Alarms blared throughout the chamber as Lorvian technicians who had taken cover now rushed to their stations, frantically trying to regain control of the weapon. "What did you do?" Cross asked as he pulled Harlow toward the limited cover of a support column. "Reversed the targeting protocols and initiated a power feedback loop," she explained breathlessly. "The cleaver can't fire externally now. If they try to activate it, the energy will be redirected internally." The chamber shook violently as the weapon systems fought against Harlow's tampering. On the main display, Warning symbols flashed in Lorvian script. Time to go, Cross decided, assessing their increasingly desperate situation. Rivera's pod is lost, but if we can reach Tanner's at the secondary insertion point, we might still have an extraction route. Fighting their way out would be even harder than getting in, but they had accomplished their primary mission. The stellar cleaver had been neutralized, at least temporarily. Now they needed to escape and report their success. As Cross gathered his remaining team for a breakout attempt, a new figure entered the chamber through the main breach. Unlike the other Lorvians, this one wore ornate armor of gleaming black metal inlaid with symbols of rank and accomplishment. His scaled skin was a deeper blue than his subordinates, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a born predator. "High Admiral Veronas, I presume," Cross said, raising his weapon. The Lorvian commander surveyed the chamber with evident disgust. "Captain Cross, you have caused considerable inconvenience, but ultimately achieved nothing. Our engineers will restore the cleaver's functionality within hours." He gestured, and his guards formed a semicircle, weapons trained on the remaining humans. "Now, you will surrender, or we will execute your team one by one." Cross glanced at Harlow, who subtly shook her head. Something in her expression told him she had done more than she had revealed. "I told you before, Admiral, humans don't negotiate with murderers." Veronas's expression darkened. "Your defiance is pointless. Even now, your planet's defenses crumble. The outcome is inevitable." "Perhaps," Cross acknowledged, "but I've learned never to bet against human ingenuity when our backs are against the wall." Before Veronas could respond, the entire ship shuddered violently. Emergency lights activated as primary power fluctuated. "What is happening?" Veronas demanded of his subordinates. A Lorvian officer consulted a portable device. "Multiple breaches throughout the ship, High Admiral. It appears the humans have launched a coordinated attack against all our capital vessels simultaneously." Cross couldn't suppress a grim smile. Phase 4 of Operation Terminus had begun. Admiral Reyes had held this final strategy in reserve, waiting until the Lorvian fleet committed fully to the assault on Earth. While Cross's team infiltrated the flagship, hundreds of dive pods had been systematically mapping the positions of all Lorvian capital ships. Now, on Reyes's command, thousands of remaining pods executed simultaneous precision jumps, targeting the most vulnerable points of each vessel as identified by the collective's analysis. The Lorvian fleet, focused on breaking Earth's orbital defenses, suddenly found itself under attack from within. Critical systems failed across dozens of ships as the pods delivered their payloads. Not conventional explosives, but specialized EMP devices designed to overload Lorvian power systems. On the Artemis platform, Admiral Reyes watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction as Lorvian ship after ship reported critical failures. They wouldn't win through firepower, but they might win through chaos and disruption. "All Earth Defense Forces, this is Admiral Reyes. Commence contre-attaque. Target all disabled or compromised Lorvian vessels." Earth's remaining ships and defense platforms surged forward, concentrating their fire on the suddenly vulnerable invaders. For the first time since the battle began, the momentum shifted perceptibly. Inside the Imperator's blade, Cross seized the moment of confusion. "Now!" he shouted, and his team opened fire on the distracted Lorvian guards. In the chaotic exchange that followed, both sides took casualties. Cross found himself face-to-face with High Admiral Veronas, the Lorvian commander moving with surprising speed for his size. "Your species is a plague," Veronas snarled as he swung a crackling energy blade toward Cross's head. "We should have eliminated you when you first reached for the stars." Cross parried the blow with his armored forearm, the shield generator absorbing most of the energy but still leaving his arm numb. "Maybe that's why you're losing today," he countered, driving forward with a rapid series of strikes. "You underestimated us from the beginning." Their brutal combat continued as the ship shuddered around them, systems failing as the human sabotage spread throughout the vessel. Dr. Harlow and the two remaining human soldiers fought their way toward the secondary extraction point, covering each other as they moved through the increasingly chaotic corridors of the flagship. Cross knew he was outmatched physically against the Lorvian admiral. Each blow from Verona's energy blade weakened his armor's shields further. But he had fought against superior opponents before and learned that victory often depended more on will than strength. When Verona's lunged forward with a strike meant to end the fight, Cross sidestepped at the last possible moment, allowing the Lorvian's momentum to carry him slightly off balance. In that fraction of a second, Cross struck at the joint of Verona's armor where the neck connected to the shoulder plate, one of the few vulnerabilities their alien allies had identified in Lorvian battle gear. The targeted strike penetrated the armor, and Verona's roared in pain and rage. His return blow caught Cross across the chest, shattering what remained of his shields and sending him crashing into a control console. As Verona's moved in for the kill, the ship lurched violently, throwing both combatants against the chamber walls. High Admiral, a Lorvian officer called urgently. The weapon, it's initiating an uncontrolled reaction sequence. Verona's turned away from Cross, sudden fear evident in his alien features as he looked at the pulsating crystal structure. Shut it down. Divert all power from the core. We cannot, High Admiral. The human virus has locked out all control systems. The feedback loop is accelerating. Understanding dawned on Cross's face as he looked to where Dr. Harlow had been working. She hadn't just disabled the cleaver temporarily. She had turned it into a bomb. You doomed us all, Veronas said, turning back to Cross with newfound respect mingled with his rage. No, Cross countered, struggling to his feet. Just your flagship, and maybe your dreams of conquest. He activated his tactical comm unit. All human personnel, evacuate immediately. Repeat, evacuate immediately. The cleaver is going critical. Taking advantage of Verona's momentary distraction with the crisis, Cross broke away, making a desperate run for the exit and the extraction point where he hoped to rejoin Harlow and the others. Behind him, he heard Verona's barking orders as the Lorvians attempted to save their doomed vessel. Through corridors filled with panicking Lorvian crew members, Cross fought his way toward the rendezvous point. The ship's internal gravity fluctuated wildly as power systems failed. Twice he had to detour around collapsed sections where structural integrity had been compromised. Finally, he reached the secondary hangar bay where Tanner's dive pod had been hidden. Dr. Harlow and one remaining soldier, Sergeant West, had already arrived and were preparing the pod for emergency departure. Captain, Harlow exclaimed with evident relief. We thought you might not make it. Nearly didn't, Cross admitted, wincing at the pain from his injuries as he climbed into the pod. Status of the ship? Critical, West replied, sealing the pod's hatch. Based on the energy readings before we left the control chamber, we have maybe 5 minutes before the cleaver goes supercritical. Tanner, the pod's pilot, initiated the launch sequence. Collective AI has mapped us an exit vector through the hangar force field during its next maintenance cycle. ET 30 seconds. The pod hummed to life, its systems connecting to the distant collective as it prepared for the precise timing needed to escape. Through the viewport, Cross could see Lorvian crew members rushing to evacuation vessels of their own, the disciplined order of the Empire's military giving way to the universal instinct for survival. 20 seconds to force field cycle, Tanner announced. A violent explosion rocked the hangar bay as secondary systems began to fail throughout the massive ship. Emergency force fields activated in some sections while failing completely in others, creating a chaotic patchwork of pressurized and vacuum areas. 10 seconds. Cross strapped himself in, his gaze fixed on the hangar bay opening where the blue shimmer of the force field maintained the atmosphere. Soon it would cycle briefly, creating their narrow window of opportunity. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The pod shot forward as the force field momentarily deactivated. They cleared the hangar bay just as secondary explosions tore through the section behind them. Once clear of the immediate structure, Tanner activated the micro-jump drive, putting maximum distance between them and the failing Lorvian flagship. They emerged from the jump several thousand kilometers away, giving them a distant but clear view of the Imperator's blade. The massive vessel, was now visibly coming apart, great sections of its hull peeling away as internal explosions rippled from the core outward. Establishing communication with Earth Command, Harlow reported, working the pod systems. After several tense moments, Admiral Reyes's voice came through. Captain Cross? Is that you? Yes, Admiral. Mission accomplished. The stellar cleaver has been neutralized, permanently. The Imperator's blade is breaking up. Well done, Captain. The tide is turning across the system. When the Lorvians realized their flagship was in trouble, their command structure began to fragment. We're pushing them back on all fronts. As if to punctuate the Admiral's words, the Imperator's blade finally succumbed to the chain reaction Dr. Harlow had initiated. A blinding flash engulfed the massive warship, momentarily outshining the distant sun. When it faded, only scattered debris remained where the pride of the Lorvian fleet had once been. Throughout the Sol system, the battle continued, but the destruction of the Lorvian flagship and the neutralization of the stellar cleaver marked a decisive turning point. Without their ultimate weapon, and with their command structure in disarray, the Lorvian advantage of numbers and technology began to matter less against humanity's desperate, coordinated defense. One by one, Lorvian capital ships either withdrew from the battle or found themselves isolated and overwhelmed by swarms of dive pods and conventional Earth vessels. Those that surrendered were granted quarter. Humanity, even in its moment of unexpected ascendancy, would not descend to the level of their enemies. 2 days later, the last organized Lorvian resistance in the Sol system collapsed. Earth had survived, bloodied, scarred but unbroken. And across the galaxy, the news spread rapidly. The supposedly primitive humans had done what no other species had managed in centuries. They had defied the Lorvian Empire and prevailed. In the aftermath, as the solar system began the long process of recovery, representatives from dozens of worlds previously subjugated by the Lorvians reached out to Earth. Some offered congratulations, others sought alliances, and a few even requested assistance in their own struggles against Imperial outposts in their systems. The Galactic Concord, shaken by the unexpected outcome and embarrassed by its failure to intervene, convened an emergency session to address the new reality. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity, previously dismissed as an insignificant newcomer, now commanded respect and attention. Captain Aiden Cross stood at the viewport of the medical recovery station in Earth orbit, watching as cleanup vessels methodically cleared debris from the space lanes. His injuries were healing, though the doctor said some of the scars would be permanent, a small price to pay for survival. "Quite a view," remarked Dr. May Harlow as she joined him. Her own injuries had been minor, though the psychological impact of the battle would take longer to process. "I never thought I'd be so happy to see Earth again." "We came close to losing it all," Cross acknowledged. "If you hadn't figured out how to sabotage the cleaver." She shrugged modestly. "It was a team effort. And honestly, I was working on educated guesses based on the data we intercepted. I'm just glad it worked." Their contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Reyes and Ambassador Morgan, both looking exhausted but satisfied. "Captain, Doctor," Reyes greeted them. "I'm glad to see you both recovering well. Your actions aboard the Lorvian flagship were instrumental in our victory." "Thank you, Admiral," Cross replied. "But I suspect we've only won a battle, not the war." Ambassador Morgan nodded grimly. "The Lorvian Empire spans hundreds of worlds. They won't take this defeat lightly. However, we've gained something precious: time. And allies," Reyes added. "The coalition of free worlds that came to our aid is growing. Many species previously cowed by Lorvian might are finding courage in our example." "What about the Concord?" Harlow asked. Morgan's expression turned sardonic, suddenly very interested in human membership, rights, and representation. Amazing how a military victory improves one's diplomatic standing. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from Reyes's communication device. He checked it, his expression turning serious. "We've received a transmission from the Lorvian Central Worlds. It appears they're sending a diplomatic envoy to discuss." Terms. Cross asked skeptically. They still outnumber us 100 to 1 across the galaxy. Why would they negotiate now? Because we've shown them something they didn't expect, Morgan explained. Capability, yes, but more importantly, resolve. That single phrase, "humans don't negotiate with murderers," has spread across Lorvian communication channels. It's created dissent among their own ranks. Reyes nodded. Intelligence reports indicate the Lorvian ruling council is divided. The military hardliners who pushed for Earth's destruction have been discredited by their failure. More moderate factions are gaining influence, arguing that the Empire has overextended itself. And the envoy? Harlow asked. Subarchon Zareth, Morgan replied, known as a reformist within their political structure. His faction has long argued for stabilization of the Empire's borders rather than continuous expansion. Cross turned back to the viewport, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them. So we're actually going to negotiate with them after all? Not with the murderers, Morgan clarified, but perhaps with those who wish to stop the murder. There's a difference, one that might just lead to a more stable galaxy for all species. As news of the Lorvian diplomatic initiative spread, humanity began the process of rebuilding what had been damaged or destroyed in the conflict. Mars colonies were reconstructed with improved defenses. Lunar bases were expanded. The dive pod technology and collective AI system were refined based on battlefield experience. No one harbored illusions that peace was guaranteed or that the Lorvian threat had been permanently neutralized. But for the first time since encountering the Galactic community, humanity stood not as supplicants hoping for acceptance, but as equals who had earned their place among the stars through courage and sacrifice. In diplomatic halls across the galaxy, the phrase that had once seemed like suicidal defiance was now spoken with newfound respect. Humans don't negotiate with murderers. It had become more than a declaration of principle. It was a reminder that even the most powerful empire could be challenged when it crossed the line from conquest to genocide. The arrival of Subarchon Zareth's diplomatic vessel in Earth orbit marked the beginning of a new chapter in human-Lorvian relations. As the negotiating teams prepared for their first meeting, Ambassador Morgan gathered her advisors, including Captain Cross and Dr. Harlow, whose first-hand experience with Lorvian tactics and technology had made them valuable consultants. Remember, Morgan instructed her team, we negotiate from strength, not desperation. The Empire has lost face throughout the galaxy. They need this agreement as much as we do, perhaps more. The meeting took place aboard a neutral Concord vessel, with representatives from several major galactic powers in attendance as observers. Subarchon Zareth, his scaled blue skin adorned with the silver markings of his political caste, entered with a dignity that belied his empire's recent defeat. Ambassador Morgan, he greeted her with a formal bow of his head. The Lorvian ascendancy extends greetings to Earth and its colonies. Morgan returned the gesture precisely. Subarchon Zareth, Earth welcomes this opportunity for dialogue. The formalities dispensed with, the real negotiations began. For 3 days, the teams discussed terms, recognition of Earth sovereignty, demilitarized zones, reparations for destroyed outposts, and the status of various disputed territories. Throughout, Zareth maintained a pragmatic approach that surprised the human delegation. On the final day, as they neared agreement on the major points, he addressed Morgan directly during a brief recess. Your species continues to confound our expectations, Ambassador, he admitted. Our military analysts predicted you would either surrender immediately or fight to complete annihilation. This measured resistance followed by reasonable diplomacy was not anticipated. Morgan studied the Lorvian diplomat carefully. Perhaps that says more about your analyst's preconceptions than about humanity, Subarchon. Indeed, Zareth seemed momentarily reflective. That phrase your captain used, about not negotiating with murderers, it has caused significant discussion within our ruling circles. How so? It forces an uncomfortable question. Are we conquerors or murderers? For centuries, the distinction seemed academic. Power determined right. He gestured toward the viewport where Earth was visible in the distance. But your resistance has sparked debate about the purpose of the empire itself. Some now argue that stabilization and cooperation might serve our interests better than endless conquest. And where do you stand in this debate, Subarchon? Zaratha's expression was unreadable to human eyes. I believe adaptability ensures survival, Ambassador. The Empire has endured for millennia by evolving when necessary. Perhaps this is such a time. When the final agreement was signed, it established not friendship between humans and Lorvians. The wounds were too fresh for that, but a wary mutual recognition. Earth gained guarantees of non-aggression and reparations. The Lorvian Empire salvaged its pride through concessions that acknowledged its continuing status as a major power. More significantly, the agreement included provisions for addressing the status of other worlds under Lorvian control, creating mechanisms for greater autonomy and self-determination. It was far from a complete dismantling of the empire, but it represented the first successful challenge to Lorvian hegemony in generations. As the Lorvian delegation prepared to depart, Captain Cross, who had observed the negotiations as a military advisor, found himself face-to-face with a Lorvian officer who had been part of Zaratha's security detail. He recognized the insignia of the Imperial fleet on the alien's uniform. "You serve in the Imperator's blade," Cross realized aloud. The Lorvian inclined his head slightly. "I was weapons officer on the 3rd command deck. I escaped before the destruction." "I'm sorry about your comrades," Cross said, surprising himself with a genuine sentiment. "As I am sorry about yours," the Lorvian replied. "I had family on Helios 4 before it was cleansed. Not all of us supported the Empire's more extreme policies." Cross studied the alien with newfound interest. "Yet you served. As you serve your people. Duty is universal, Captain." The Lorvian hesitated before adding, "May I ask you something?" "Of course. This principle your people invoked, not negotiating with murderers. What happens when the line between murderer and soldier blurs? When orders conflict with moral clarity?" Cross considered the question carefully. "We're still working that out ourselves. I think the key is in how we respond when we recognize that line has been crossed." The Lorvian seemed to ponder this. "Perhaps that is the difference then. Not in whether we commit acts of violence. All species do, but in how we account for them afterward." He offered a formal salute in the human style. "Until we meet again, Captain Cross. Hopefully under more peaceful circumstances." As Earth rebuilt and strengthened its defenses, the ripple effects of humanity's stand against the Lorvian Empire continued to spread throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Concord, shaken out of its complacency, began reforms to provide more effective protection for its member worlds. The coalition of free worlds, formalized in the aftermath of the battle, became a significant new power bloc, with Earth as a prominent member. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, as it came to be known, a memorial was dedicated in orbit at the point where the most intense fighting had occurred. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including a small delegation of Lorvians, mostly from Zaratha's moderate faction. Admiral Reyes, recently promoted to Fleet Admiral, delivered the commemoration address. Standing before the assembled dignitaries with the gleaming memorial, a simple sphere inscribed with the names of all who had fallen, floating in space behind him, he spoke words that would be remembered for generations.